Now we're going to look at the first one. So it's 春江花月夜, Spring River Flower Moon Night. It was written by Zhang Ruoxu. So I say his name the Chinese way. So family name first and given name last. And it was estimated to have written in 678 AD. So this is the poem that I copied. So my calligraphy still needs to work on. I'm working on it. So Zhang Ruoxu lived in the Tang Dynasty. So Tang Dynasty is about 600 to 900 AD. So 300 years, spans 300 years. And Tang Dynasty is like the Renaissance era in the West. Art and literature flourished. There are 50,000 poems passed down from Tang Dynasty. But Zhang Ruoxu was not very well known during his lifetime. In fact, we don't really know for sure when he lived. We only have very small bits and pieces of information from the historical accounts of other famous people. So we know at one time he was a very low-level government clerk. And we don't know how many poems he wrote, but only 2 of his poems passed down. So, but this one was regarded by later generations as the unique one that shines through all Tang Dynasty poems. So before I go on, I want to mention the symbol of the full moon in Chinese culture. We know in the West, the full moon is associated with Halloween, with witches and cats, but the full moon in Chinese culture is associated with something beautiful. So it's a symbol of peace, love, auspice, couple and family being together. And in some other Oriental cultures, it has the same, similar meaning. So for example, when I read Buddha's biography, there was a description of Buddha Buddha and his disciples were sitting under the full moon in the fall evening by the lake, and they were immersed in the fragrance of the white lotus flower. So there is the fall lake flower moon night, the Indian version. So now let's imagine we are there with the poet by the riverside and where the river flows into the sea. So what do we see? So we see in spring, the river rises as high as the sea. And up from the sea with the tide, the moon is born bright. 春江潮水连海平，海上明月共潮生. So in the first 2 lines, 3 of the elements in the title, the spring, the river, and the moon, are already presented. And I especially want to bring your attention to the word born. So the moon was born out of the water. And when we see the word born, so what do we associate to? We often associate to something new, something full of life. It's the beginning of life, and it's very promising. It has a bright future. And now, moonlight rolls on water for 10,000 miles, and where the spring river flows, there her light flows too. 滟滟随波千万里，何处春江无月明? So these 2 lines describe how the moonlight shine on the water, and what does the water look like. So I highlighted these 2 Chinese words. So when I was copying it, I just find it amazing. I understand the Chinese, even the words more. So we all know that Chinese words are symbols. So for example, this is the moon. This is the earliest symbol of the moon. So it does look like a picture of the crescent moon. And then later on, it evolved into a character, making it more square. Same idea, the sun symbol is this, and then it evolved into this. And once we have these basic symbols, we can form new words. So the sun and the moon together is one word. It means bright. And when you think about it, it's very neat. The moon and the sun, it's bright. So you see here, it's the bright. So for the same rationale, any word that has to do with water has the three dots. So these are the water symbol. So the river has the dots, the three dots. The wave has the three dots. The tide has the three dots. The sea has the three dots. So this word, yin, yin, yin. So its first part is the water. Second part means plenty, many. And then third part is color. So water, plenty, color. That's what the light on the water looked like. So we need to close our eyes and remember at that time that when you were standing by a river, a lake, or the sea, and what do you see on the water when the sun or the moon shines on the water? If you can't imagine, so here is a painting by A.Y. Jackson. He is one of the group of 7 Canadian painters. And this piece is at the McMichael Art Gallery in Kleinburg. And you see how he painted the sun on the water. You see the many colors and the reflection. So to me, that is 滟滟随波千万里. So now, the river winds around the fragrant islet where. So now the flowers come in. And why do we know there are flowers? It's the fragrance. And then the moon flowers, the blooming flowers in moonlight all look like snow. So these 2 lines, one is talking about the interaction of the river and the flower. And then the second line is talking about the moon and the flower. So all 5 elements are now in this up to now, all 5 elements are out. You cannot tell her beam from frost in the air, nor from white sand upon the beach below. So this is talking about the moonlight, and it looks like frost floating in the air, or when it's shining on the beach, you cannot tell which is the white sand, which is the moonlight. 江流婉转绕芳甸，月照花林皆似线. Notice 线 here actually means tiny little snow beads. 空里流霜不觉飞，汀上白沙看不见. So now the poet looked far, the moon comes out and looked close, and now he's looking far again. He's looking at where the water meets the sky. What does he see? 江天一色无前程，皎皎空中孤月轮. The spotless clear sky and river blend into one. A lonely white moon shines brilliantly far and wide. So this picture, a very simple one of Chinese painting, is really a very good depiction of the spotless clear sky meets the river. And Chinese painting use a lot of white space. It really goes well with this line. The second line, do you not find interesting that he used the word lonely to describe the moon? Why does he use the word lonely to describe the moon? Who is lonely? Well, probably he's describing himself. He is feeling lonely, right? So imagine we are there and we are standing by ourselves looking at this beautiful scene. What would go through our mind? What would you be thinking about? So here's what the poet thought. Who by the riverside first saw the moon? When did the moon first see a human by riverside? 江畔何人初见月？江月何年初照人？ I always feel awestruck by when I read these two lines. I feel goosebumps on me. So when I was visiting the Canadian Rocky Mountains, and if you have been there, you would also know, the mountains are so tall and they are huge rocks and layers and they go into the sky. When I saw that, I can't help wonder, how long have they been here? What have they seen? So I feel the same way. So does the poet get an answer? Generations have come and passed by. From year to year, the moon look alike, old and new. 人生代代无穷已，江夜年年望相似. So he didn't answer the question directly. Instead, he said, well, humans come and go, but the moon still look the same. So this picture is my picture. I took it in 2015 along the Thames River in London, UK. This is the last full moon of 2020 I took in Markham. And this picture was taken by my friend Bob from his backyard in downtown Toronto on New Year's Day. So the moon does look alike across time, across space. Who is the moon waiting for? Is it waiting for the poet? Or is it waiting for you and me? The poet says, we don't know tonight for whom she sheds her rays, but hear the river say to its water adieu. So we don't know. We don't know who the moon is waiting for. We just see the water flowing away. So what is the feeling that the poet is feeling right now? It's probably along the lines that he sees the universe. The universe is so big. And the time that the universe has been forming is so long. We human beings are so small in this vast universe. Our existence is so short, so insignificant in the eternity of time. But then, what is the meaning of our lives? What is the meaning of your life? Have you thought about it? Well, generations of human beings have been seeking the meaning of life, and we have to find it for ourselves. Each and every one of us have to find it for ourselves. So now the poem took a turn. Away, away is sailing a single cloud white. Green maple dog sad and concerned. So my friend Bob, who speaks English as first language, mentioned the Chinese poems don't have pronouns. Who are these two lines talking about? There's no subject. I said, yes, I agree. Chinese poems are very economical with words. Not only him, just me. I grew up in China. In my younger years, when I read these lines, they just flew over my head. I don't understand a thing. But in recent years, when I was copying this again and again, it just occurred to me. One day, I could see an image, a picture of a boat sailing away from the from the dock. And there's a white sail on the boat. So that's that single cloud white. And there's a man on the boat. And then on the green dock, there was a woman. And she felt sad and concerned. So the translation is sad and concerned. The Chinese is only one word. We're very economical. So 愁, and it's the fall over the heart. So we will have to think about a fall day, not our gorgeous fall color fall day, but the kind of fall day when there are no leaves. All the leaves are gone. It's raining, it's windy, and we are at the bus depot saying goodbye to your loved one. That's how our heart feels. That's the fall over the heart. So who are we talking about? Well, these two lines may give some clue. 谁家今夜扁舟子，何处相思明月楼? Who is sailing his boat tonight? Where the house bathed in moonlight is with the concerned. So, who do you think the poet is writing about at this point? He's writing about himself, right? So a quick recap of the poem up to this point. So the poet went to the river and he saw this beautiful moon come out, and he wrote about how beautiful it is and the light shining on the water, shining on the flowers, on the sand, floating in the air, how beautiful that is. And then he was awestruck by this vastness of universe, and he started to ponder about the universe and meaning of life. And then he came back to himself. He said, wait a minute, how did I get here? So this is almost like in a modern movie. So there's a flashback. The camera went back to the time when he left home. So he was the one sailing away from home, and his wife was the one standing on the dock with trees at the back. So now the camera went even further back. Well, the camera went back home now. So he was imagining what home is like. Alas, the poor moon is lingering over the house. It shines over the dressing table of the traveler. 可怜楼上月徘徊，映照离人妆镜台. So he's saying the poor moon is lingering over the house. Remember, this is the second time he described the moon with an unusual word. Earlier, he said the lonely moon. Now he said the poor moon. Is it really the moon he's writing about? What do you think? I think he's describing his wife. The poor woman is wandering from room to room in the house, and she looks at the things that her husband has used before. She touches the dressing table that her husband used. On the curtain, it won't leave by rolling up the curtain. On the washing stone, it won't leave by wiping the stone. So again, no subject, so I put in it. So it is the moonlight. So it says the moonlight is shining on the curtain. When we roll it up, it doesn't go away. So again, is it really about the moonlight? It is her thoughts of him. So she was wandering around the house. She rolled up the curtains. Just as the moonlight that wouldn't go away, her thoughts of him are still there. And she goes to the riverside to wash clothes. And the moonlight is shining on the stone, and she wipes it. It doesn't go away. So are her thoughts of him. So all this time, so the poet was imagining that his wife was missing him. Seeing the same moon but can't see each other, wish I can follow the moon to shine on you. 此时相望不相闻，愿随月华流照君. So I saw this moon. I imagine you are also seeing the same moon. I cannot see you, we cannot see each other, but this moon connects us. So this has been a theme that's written by many other poets in Chinese literature. 鸿雁长飞光不度，鱼龙潜跃水成文。But message-bearing swans can't fly out of moonlight, nor can letter-sending fish leap out of their place. So these two lines were referring to some old folk story saying that swans and fish can carry letter. But right now, I want to write a letter, but there is no one to carry the letter. So these 4 lines, we don't know from whose perspective it was written. It could be from the poet. So the I could be the poet, could be his wife that he is imagining, or could be both. So this theme of loved ones missing each other is like eternal in Chinese literature, because in the old days, men often have to go away from home. So for example, writing the civil service examination, or to go on a government post, or to do business. So they sometimes could go away for months, and families could not see each other. So that's why they write about it. Last night dreamed falling flowers would not stay. Alas, can't go home although half spring has gone. 昨夜闲谈梦落花，可怜春半不还家. So we don't know who is dreaming, but by now we can reasonably assume it's the poet. He dreamed flowers, but half of the spring has gone. I can still not go home. And it didn't say when he left home, but we knew the trees were green. So it must be last summer or early fall last year. So he's been away for several months by now. The water-bearing spring will flow away. The moon hanging over the river will set soon. 江水流春去欲尽，江潭落月复西斜. The setting moon sinks into a heavy mist. It's a long way between southern rivers and eastern seas. 斜月沉沉藏海雾，碣石潇湘无限路. So now all the elements coming out again. So, but at this time, the moon is setting, the flowers are falling, the rivers are flowing away and carrying spring with it. But there's still a long way between me and home. I still cannot go home. And when we cannot go home, who do we envy? When we envy those who can go home, right? So how many can go home by moonlight who are missed? The sinking moon sheds love over riverside trees. 不知乘月几人归，落月摇情满江树. So I don't know who are the lucky ones who can go home, but I can only imagine the moonlight is shedding love on me. So this is my picture of Moran Lake at Banff in Alberta. I've been there many times. It's really beautiful. So reading this poem, I find it amazing that someone who lived 1,300 years ago from us thought the same thoughts that we are thinking, or felt the same feelings that we are feeling today. This theme of enjoying nature's beauty and pondering on the vastness of the universe and our place as human beings in the universe, all missing our loved ones. This is a universal theme, and it goes it goes across time, across space. No matter who you are, where you live, and when you lived, you would have felt the same feeling and thought the same thoughts. I am just very grateful that Zhang Ruoxu wrote it down in such a beautiful way for us to enjoy today. So that's the first one. So now we travel in time 300 years forward and we go to the Song Dynasty, and we are going to enjoy赤壁怀古in memory of the Battle of the Red Cliff. Because it's a poem about a historic event, so there's a lot of historical backgrounds. It is also a much shorter poem. I will start with the historic backgrounds. So Su Shi lived in the Song Dynasty. Song Dynasty, again, is about 300 years. It's from 960, so after the fall of Tang Dynasty, and then all the way to 1279 when the Mongolians conquered. So it's the next, it's the Ming Dynasty who went afterwards. No, it is actually the Mongolians. Yeah, the Mongolians took over China. So Song Dynasty is described by Wikipedia. In Wikipedia, it says it has the most advanced economy in the medieval world. So as such, Song Dynasty saw a great advancement in technology, in society, in literature, in culture. So for example, the movable type print was discovered or invented in Song Dynasty. Song Dynasty also improved, or even I'd say perfected, the civil service examination system. So it was able to select the best talent from all over the country to staff its government. So as a result, at the time, the best career for a young person with an education is to write the civil service examination and get a government job. And Su Shi was born in a literary family. His father Su Xun, his younger brother Su Zhe, the three of them were actually called San Su, the Su family of three. And they made into the 8 scholars of Tang and Song Dynasty. So Tang Song Ba Da Jia, all three of them were in the 8. Su Shi was very talented when he was young, and he passed the highest level of civil service examination in his mid-20s. At the time, the essay that of the finalists were read by the emperor. When the emperor read his essay and his brother's essay, the emperor actually said, "I found future prime ministers for my sons and grandsons." However, Su Shi never made it to prime minister. His brother Su Zhe at one point held a position equivalent to the deputy prime minister. So this is Su Shi, painted by his contemporary Li Gonglin, and it was regarded as the one that resembled him most. So he had a very bumpy government career. So all the black dots are places he's been to, like all these remote government posts he's been to. And you need to understand, at the time, the good jobs are in the capital, in the central government. And so those remote jobs are not considered as good or as important. But Su Shi tried to stay away from the capital, from the power center, because he got into trouble with powerful people from time to time. He has, because of his talent once, he was like, people were jealous of him. And also because he was very outspoken. So on 3 occasions, he was exiled to a remote place at a lower position as a punishment. And this poem was written during his first exile. And this is a little excerpt of a very famous Song Dynasty painting on the bright and clear day by the riverside. So you can see at the time people travel by boat powered by humans and also by wind. And all they travel by donkey-drawn carriages. So you can imagine these trips take a long time and must be very, very hard. I want to mention one place he's been to, Hangzhou, which is in this area of China, so on the east coast near Shanghai. Hangzhou is known for the beautiful West Lake. So there is a Chinese saying, there's paradise above, there's West Lake on earth. And Su Shi actually was assigned there twice, and he was the deputy mayor at one point. He organized conservation work for the West Lake. So in memory of his good work, people named this path after him. So this is the Su Pass, Su Di. So now we have to go back even further in history to talk about the Three Kingdom time. That's what this poem was about. So in the 3rd century, the Han Dynasty fell. And then after that, many local powers fought one another to expand their own control. And then until like 3 kingdoms, so Wei Shu, they rose and they formed some kind of a balance that lasted a few decades. So in 208, the Wei army, they came all the way to the north shore of Yangtze River. So this is Yangtze River. And they had 200,000 men. And Wu army at the time only had 30,000 men. But Wu army won the battle. How did they do that? So the Wu army's General Zhou, he was very knowledgeable and he strategized around the weather. So in December, the wind usually blew from the north to south, but one day the wind blew from the south to north. General Zhou was able to predict that and he strategized around that. So he had his army loading small boats with hay, and they set the hay on fire, and the wind blew across the river, and all the battleships, like they are huge they are really modern for the time, and they were all destroyed. So that was the historical background. So now we have Su Shi standing by the shore of this Yangtze River in his 40s, and he was looking at a battlefield that's about 900 years before him. And we said this was during his first exile. So what happened was someone accused him of attacking the emperor through his poems. So he was imprisoned for over a year, and the discussion was about when he would be executed. But there were also a lot of people in the capital who sympathized with him and because of his talent. So they pleaded to the emperor to spare his life, including the emperor's own grandmother and also including Su Shi's brother. So Su Zhe offered his own government position in exchange of his brother's life. So the emperor finally forgave him and sent him on exile to Hubei province, which the Yangtze River flew through. That's why he had the tour there. So in the distance of time, Su Shi was like 900 years ago from us. And then the event he was going to write about was 900 years before him. So I was thinking, is there a Western equivalent? So I looked up, and guess what? In year 208, there were actually many battles in modern-day Scotland. when the Roman emperor was trying to conquer the then called Caledonia. So I was imagining, so what if an English literary figure, let's say Chaucer, he lived in the 14th century. So he was there also in his 40s and looking at this battlefield. What would he have written about? What would he be thinking? Well, we don't know because it was not recorded, but we know what Su Shi wrote. 大江东去，浪淘尽，千古风流人物。Big river flowing east, the waves washed away heroes for thousands of years. So Su Shi, look at this river flowing. There was nothing now, but something really significant happened here. So the word heroes, so by the way, this one I translated, and it's very direct translation. I couldn't find a better word to translate the Chinese word. So I used heroes. It's not very exact. The Chinese words actually means people who made their names in history. So then he said, over there to the west, people say that is Three Kingdoms General Zhou's Red Cliff battlefield. 故垒西边人道是三国周郎赤壁. What does it look like? Gigantic rocks soaring to the sky, huge waves splashing the shore and shooting thousands of puddles of snow. 乱石穿空，惊涛拍岸，卷起千堆雪. Very dramatic, very fitting for a bloody battle with fire, sword, spear, horses, and all that, and a lot of people dying. But why do people fight? Why did people willingly give their lives? So here's the poet's interpretation. 江山如画，一时多少豪杰. The rivers and mountains are so beautiful. There were so many heroes then. So because the land is so beautiful, they all want to control it. They all want power. They want to rule it. So think about us today. Are we that different? Why do we want to get a promotion? Why do people want to start their own business? Well, because a promotion means more power, more control, and a successful business means you can achieve more. So we also want control, want power, and we also try and strive to do better in life. So after all, we're not that different. Now the poem went to the main character of this story, so General Zhou. 遥想公瑾当年，小乔出嫁了，雄姿英发. Think about General Zhou then. If we were to write about a general who fought a battle and won a battle with 30,000 men over an enemy of 200,000 men, how would we write about him? We would probably write about his military achievements, right? But here, Su Shi wrote about his family life. He was recently married to Miss Chao, handsome and strong. And Miss Chao was the most beautiful woman of the kingdom, actually two Miss Chaos. So the older sister married to the king of Wu Kingdom, and the younger sister married General Zhou. But it makes sense. It's a woman who make a man strong and handsome, right? And also, if we write about General Zhou, and what does he look like? How would we describe what he is wearing? Would he look like this, wearing a helmet and armor and holding a spear and looking very fierce into the enemy? Well, here's what Su Shi wrote. 羽扇纶巾，谈笑间，樯裸灰飞烟灭。 wearing silk hairband and waving a feather fan. So he looks like this. He's wearing civilian clothes. He was waving a fan. And instead of leading his men and charging into the enemy, he talked and smiled while fierce enemy disappeared in ashes. It's a very bloody battle, and it's a big deal, but Su Shi wrote it in such a very unusual way. It almost feels it's too easy. So now the poet turns to himself. So now we see a pattern here, right? So Chinese poets, they go to some place significant or some beautiful scene. They describe the scene. If there's a historic story, they describe about that. And then they talk about themselves. So he said, during the old times in my imagination, you may laugh at me for being sentimental. That is why my hair is turning gray. 故国神游，多情应笑我早生华发. Remember, this was during his a major setback in his life. He just had a nightmare. He was almost killed. And would he wanted to be like General Zhou? Would he wanted to make his name in history? Probably. But this is not the time to dream of that. So putting his life and his setback in the context of history and thinking about those people who fought, some died for power and glory. And he wrote, 人生如梦，一尊还酹江月. Life is like a dream. Let me give a glass of wine to the moon in the river. So think about it. How do we feel when we suffer setbacks? What happened when our business did not do well? And what happens when we did not get that promotion that we thought we deserve? So if we also try to do what Su Shi is doing here, to put our life, our setbacks in the context of history, and think about people who fought before us, what would that look like? How would we feel? So, like for example, we all, if you know, if you remember, like Al Gore and Hillary Clinton, they were both like this close to the highest job in the whole world, but they didn't get it. And they will never get it in their lifetime. So do you feel that this reaction, pour a glass of wine into the river, is very fitting? Well, what does that mean is we accept life as is. We still carry on. We still do our best. And so Su Shi still lived another 19 years after this. And he actually also went on 2 more exiles in his life. So by now, I want to quote Mengzi. So Mengzi was known by the Western scholars as Mencius. He's a Confucius scholar who lived 100 years after Confucius. And he once wrote, 穷则独善其身，达则兼济天下. So it says if we are doing well in our life, in our career, we should serve others. But if we don't do that well, if our life, our career is not that smooth, we should still live an honest life. And I feel Su Shi truly lived to that teaching. And he made his name in history, not as a prime minister, but because he left us all these valuable literary and scholarly work. So it also reminds me of that famous saying by Beethoven. Beethoven was thought to have said this. there were prince in the past, there were princes now, there are princes in future, but there's only one Beethoven. So for Su Shi, there are prime ministers in the past, present, and future, but there's only one Su Shi.